So hey guys, and welcome to a new video, and today I'm gonna show you guys how I made my remix of Gimme Gimme, and you guys really liked that one, so I thought I'm gonna show you guys how I made it. And before we start with the actual breakdown of the video, I want to just say that I used some stems from not the original, from a cover actually. So some sounds are like the piano and drums and stuff. I have some stuff from the stems, but those are from a cover, not the actual song. And the vocal is also from a different cover actually. And also I had to bounce some stuff to audio, like the vocal chops and some other stuff, because my computer couldn't handle it otherwise. And first I'm gonna show you what I did to the vocal, and then I'm gonna mute it so we can hear the other elements in the song. So for the verse vocal, which sounds like this, it already has a lot of reverb. I didn't add any reverb here. So this is without the effects, and what I did is I added some, because the vocal, it's not actually really good quality. I don't know what it is. It's like, it sounds a little bit like it's filtered. It's actually not filtered, but it kind of sounds like it. And I used Soothe here to reduce some of the resonances, then a de-esser to take out the sharp S's, and I boosted the high end a little bit here. And then there's also a filter automation right before the build-up. And yeah, and on the main vocal in the chorus, I actually used CLA vocals and added a little bit more reverb, compression and EQ, and just a low cut here. So let's just start with the intro here. And you guys probably already noticed that the sound here is a lot of Kashmir sounds. Kygo used something like this in the Truth intro, and I thought it kind of made it more epic and stuff. And I also added this harmonica, which is from Nexus. Just one tone, it adds to the whole atmosphere. And then also a brass from, basically an acoustic bass from the BBC Symphony Orchestra. And I used a bandpass filter, and it starts really low, and you can see in the waveform it becomes really thin. And it sounds like this. You can see it starts very low, and then it goes more into the high frequencies. And I just want to have a little bit of movement and wanted to make the intro like really epic. And then we also have the 80s strings here, and they are filtered, and they sound like this. And the cutoff just opens throughout the build-up in the intro. And those are two presets here from the 80s expansion. And then there's also the drop synth here. That's going up throughout the build-up. And I made this drop first, and then I made the intro based on that. And I kind of want to have it, I wanted to keep the original vibe of the song a little bit. So in the original, they also have like the synth in the intro, and then they also have the melody right after the intro. And then for the verse, I stayed very, kind of true to the original, just with a more modern sound. So I used this very similar bass line and some very similar synths, just so you know what kind of was the idea, how I wanted to be this remix. And obviously the drop is like a Kygo sound. And the intro is just like a light version of the drop, basically. And I'm gonna show you all the single elements later, because we're going to the drop, but there's just some pianos missing here, and I made it a little bit more like a light version of the drop. And in the verse, actually there's a little sound effect that goes like into the verse. And then we have those strings here, which are the same as in the intro, just playing a different melody. And this is actually something that was played in the original as well, and I layered them with some contact strings here. You can hear one is on the left, the other on the right. And I laid them together with this disco fox sound here. And then obviously we also have some drums here. We have a kick. And I laid this with an Oliver snare. This is actually just a loop that I chopped up, and I took some hi-hat here, and I took the snare as well. And then I laid this with an original, not original, but from the cover version, a drum loop that sounds like this. Just to give it a little bit more of an original feeling, and as well as the bass, which is also from the cover. And this bass actually sounded kind of different before. It sounded like this. You can hear a little bit more top end, and I EQ'd it a little bit, you can see here, and added some saturation. But I wanted to have it a little bit of a modern sound, so I added another bass, which is from Contact, this one here, and this is actually also bounced as a stem. And you can see I added some distortion on this bass. Sounds like this on its own. And together they sound like this. Just a really cool fat bass here. And I also added this bass slide here, which kind of fitted really cool. Listen to everything together. And then there's some crash here. And then later on I added another hi-hat loop that I used in the drop. And 2 crashes. There's also 2 toms here that I laid together and panned them left and right. And they actually sounded like this before. And then I threw some CLA drums and standard clip on them. And they get like a more fat sound and kind of work really well in the mix here. And then we have a little sine thing here, sine wave thing. Just very low volume, but kind of fades into the pre-chorus here. And I added another kick here, so we have 3 kicks here actually. This is also from the Oliver loop. Sounds like this. And I think I added some reverb and stuff to it, yeah. And there's also some sound effect here. Makes it kind of disco-y. And also the snare from the drop here. Then here we have a lot of elements actually coming in. So we have a piano from the stems. This is now the pre. And this thing here is actually kind of cool. This is a stem from Hot Stuff from the intro. And I pitched it up, I believe, to make it fit the chord, and it works really well here. It sounds kind of cool. And so here we have a symphony bass, then some strings, more strings, even more strings, more strings, more strings. And I really wanted to have this like big climax that going into the build-up now then. And all together with the 80s strings and the pianos and the drums and the bass and everything, it sounds like this. So in the next section is the build-up, and the vocal chops there, as I said, they're already printed to audio, so I can't show you exactly them. But I'm actually gonna do a separate video showing you how you can make vocal chops like Kygo, and I'm gonna show you those vocal chops and actually some other ones, and I'm gonna show you exactly how I made everything there. Basically, they're like filtered here. The filter goes up, and then in the chorus I only have the background chops. And underneath the chops we obviously have the 80s strings again with the cutoff going on like in the intro. Then we have some of the pianos that I used in the drop and the bass. Everything is very similar to Hot Stuff. As I said in another video, this was actually, Hot Stuff remake was actually the foundation of how I started this remix. And there's another clap added, but basically it's very similar. I just changed the MIDI. You can see it's coming in here. Same with the piano. And then in the drop, we have everything open on cutoff, and we have this piano. Then we have this marimba. Then we have this chord plug. And the grand piano. A sub bass. The mid bass, which is Nexus. And the main bass. And I actually threw a lot of plugins on this one. It actually didn't change the sound that much. So this is without plugins. This is with. Basically, the main thing I did here was obviously some sidechain, but all those other things and the saturation, which makes it a little bit more fat. And this filter is just for the build-up there, but I wanted to cut a little bit of the high end here. And wanted to control the sub frequencies a little bit more because it was working better with the kick together. There's just some little mixing details here. And then for the drums we have a kick and a snare, some hi-hats and some FX. And the chorus and the drop actually have different chords here, so if I play them. Just a totally different chord progression here. And to make the drop a little bit more full, I added this synth here. And obviously the lead is also stacked a lot more. So we have a bunch of sounds here. And this flute here is actually just used in the last drop. I'm gonna show this later. And we also have this percussion sound here. And an ARP from Nexus. And the 80s sound here. And to make it a little bit faster in this part, I also added this drum loop here. It's a very fast hi-hat loop. And I almost forgot to mention, actually, right before the build-up, I have an automation on the master. And we have to turn off the master for that. There's actually a reverb automation and a filter, which is like the transition from the pre-chorus into the build-up. And it slowly starts fading back the reverb. And in the second verse, we actually don't have that many more elements. I just added this electric guitar here. As well as in the pre-chorus. And there's an automation for the volume, so it gets louder throughout the pre-chorus. And in the pre, I also added those strings from the stems. Those weren't in the first pre-chorus. A pad from Nexus. And really important, this piano here, because this piano is actually pretty important for the transition into the chorus, because in the chorus this is the same piano, but this plays a slightly different MIDI here. And it's actually filtered. Together with the piano from the stems. And I wanted this section to be the final climax, so I added a few more elements to make it even more crazy, so it sounds like this. And basically the two verses and pre-chorus are very similar. I just added a little more elements just to keep the energy going throughout the second verse and make it not feel like just another verse, just like it's a little bit more on top. And then there comes the chorus again, which is the same as the first one, but then there comes the vocal chop drop, and in the vocal chop drop I actually added this signature guitar here, which you probably recognize if you know the original song. And I used electric sunburst to remake that sound kind of, and I put that on top in the drop. And this pad here also. And there's actually a percussion fill here. Kind of works pretty good with the snare together. And then there's also a riser that goes into the final drop. And you can see I layered a few samples here together and just automate the pitch here. And it doesn't sound too great on its own, but in the context of the other elements, it works pretty good here. So pretty much the only difference to the drop before, to the other melody drop, is the flute here. And that I changed some notes in the melody, because if you look here, those blue notes, they're actually not part of the original melody. And I added them to make it feel more like a climax at that point. So, and that's pretty much it for the breakdown of this song. And actually, I forgot to mention that I mixed this song in a separate session, so it sounds a little bit different from what you probably know. But it was just some minimal stuff that I fixed there. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, let me know. in the comments below. I'm happy to answer them. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see each other in the next video.